Well, howdy everyone. A lot of people have asked me to look at the lens I have today, the Canon 70-200mm f4 IS USM L. Your wish is my command. I love reviewing Canon's L lenses. The 70-200mm focal length has always been extremely popular. It's particularly nice on one of Canon's expensive full-frame cameras like the 6D, where 70mm is a little wider than you might expect, but 200mm is still decently telephoto. Most people though have less expensive APS-C cameras, which have smaller image sensors, and on an APS-C camera the lens is telephoto all the way, being the equivalent of 112 to 320mm. The lens has a maximum aperture of f4 throughout its entire zoom range, which means it lets in a bit more light than cheaper telephoto lenses do, and that slightly wider aperture also gives you a slightly more blurry background. You can get faster lenses, but f4 is a nice aperture for telephoto work. This is the newest version of the lens with image stabilization and improved optics. Image stabilization, or IS, is a great help, but it makes the lens much more expensive than the original, which I reviewed last year. It comes in at about £800 to £900, a huge amount of money. For that price, it had better be something special. The build quality of this lens is absolutely wonderful. It's made of metal, so it feels super tough, but it's not too heavy, so it balances well on nearly any Canon camera. To be honest, I'd much rather have this than any f2.8 telephoto zoom lens, because those things are so bulky and heavy in comparison, not to mention expensive. The zoom ring is super smooth, but still quite light to turn. Combined with the lens's constant maximum aperture, this makes it good for video work. The focus ring is also very smooth and well damped. As you'd expect with a lens of this class, it has full-time manual focus, so you can turn the focus ring anytime. The autofocus on this lens is super fast, accurate and silent. Unlike its non-image stabilized older brother, this lens is weather sealed. Well, if you put a filter on the front element. Here you can see a gasket on the back of the lens, which helps to keep out water and dust. If you live in Wales, like I do, then that's particularly useful as it never stops raining. This is of course a telephoto lens, so having image stabilization is incredibly useful. Here's some video without image stabilization, and here it is turned on. The image stabilization is very effective and well behaved on this lens. It doesn't jump or jerk around as you get video footage. The only problem is that it's a bit noisy, as you can hear here. So if you are video making, you might want to use an external microphone with this lens. But overall, the lens is built amazingly well, and it's a real joy to use in any situation. Let's look at the picture quality. I'm testing the lens on a full-frame camera, a 20 megapixel Canon 6D. I'll show you some APS-C results in a minute. At 70mm with the aperture wide open at f4, the lens is razor sharp in the middle with striking colours and contrast. The situation is about the same in the corners, with only a little loss of sharpness. If we stop down to f5.6, we see a nice improvement. This is a really great performance right from f4. Let's zoom the lens in halfway to 135mm. Straight from f4, we see again that the lens really is incredibly sharp from the middle right into the corners. Stopping the lens's aperture down brings a little more brightness and even more sharpness into the corners. Again, this is a really great performance. Finally, let's zoom all the way into 200mm. Again, it's the same story. Straight from f4, the lens is razor sharp in the middle of the image, and the corners are also very good. Colours and contrast are excellent, there's no chromatic aberration, and there's surprisingly little vignetting. Normally you'd see substantially dark corners zoomed in and with the aperture wide open. There's another nice increase in the sharpness in the corners when you stop down to f5.6. So we can say that this is one of those rare, wonderful lenses which is always razor sharp. No matter what focal length you choose or what aperture, so long as you're in focus, this lens will deliver. An excellent performance on full-frame cameras. Okay, so not everyone in the world can afford a full-frame camera, so let's see how the lens performs on my APS-C camera, an 18 megapixel Canon 6DD. Actually, I'll save us the bother and just tell you that the performance is the same. If anything, it's slightly sharper in the corners. I fully tested it, and the lens's pictures are razor sharp no matter what you do. Amazing. I couldn't even see any chromatic aberrations, which are normally more pronounced on the APS-C cameras. What a great performance. This lens really is totally uncompromising. Well, sharpness isn't everything, so let's take a look at some other optical issues. I already mentioned that, even on a full-frame camera, vignetting is quite low. There's also very little distortion, which is typical for a telephoto lens. So, let's look at the lens's bokeh. The autofocus areas this lens produces look very nice and smooth, free from any annoying highlighting or harshness. As you can see in this video, the lens handles bright lights very well, maintaining good contrast with only a little bit of flaring. The lens's closest focus distance is 1.2 meters, which is about average for this type of lens. It's perfectly good for getting pictures of flowers or other relatively small things. The picture quality at close distances manages to remain very good, even at its widest aperture of f4. So, what more could I possibly say? I simply cannot think of a single bad word to say about this wonderful lens. Normally I can find some kind of issue, but this time I've failed. Its build quality and picture quality are absolutely excellent, the image stabilization is very nice, and it's a versatile lens both for still photography and video work. Is it worth over £800? That's a hard question to answer because it's an awful lot of money. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's just about worth it. The lens is extremely enjoyable and professional to use in every way, and the sharp, beautiful pictures it can create for you are simply jaw-dropping. Professionals who would use this kind of lens all the time might want to get the f2.8 version for more light gathering and an even blurrier background. But I value the smaller size and weight and lower cost of this f4 version. I have no hesitation whatsoever in saying that it is very highly recommended.